This wasn't a smash and grab. This wasn't a quick raid. This was one of the most audacious, bold, and meticulously planned bank heists in modern European history. And it happened over a holiday weekend in a quiet German city that no one ever expected would become the stage for an extraordinary crime. It began in Gelsenkirchen, a city in the industrial heartland of Western Germany, where one of the most ordinary savings banks stood as a symbol of trust and financial stability. People from all walks of life walked through its doors, deposited their savings in safety deposit boxes, and believed their most precious possessions were untouchable. But in the final days of December 2025, that belief was shattered. For weeks leading up to the crime, a group of unknown masterminds watched and waited. They did not strike in the heat of day when eyes were everywhere, and cameras watched constantly. They did not attempt a brazen daylight confrontation. Instead, they selected the quietest period of the year, the lull between Christmas and New Year's, when fewer staff were present, fewer customers were walking the halls, and security routines were relaxed, if only by the inertia of holiday calm. Late on a winter night, during those hours when the world seemed to sleep, the heist began. A team of masked figures emerged in the parking structure adjacent to the Sparkasse bank. They moved calmly, their movements deliberate, carrying large bags and tools. Their appearance was unremarkable enough to avoid immediate suspicion, yet calculated enough to reveal planning of a different order. They were not amateurs. The tools they carried were not from a typical handyman's kit. They had large industrial drilling equipment, machines capable of punching through reinforced concrete and penetrating the kind of barrier that was meant to be impregnable. They moved to a section of the basement wall that stood between them and the vault, the very heart of the bank's security. Over the course of hours, while the holiday silence cloaked the neighborhood, these individuals drilled relentlessly into the concrete. It was not a quick ridged hole, but a deliberate penetration, strategically placed to avoid obvious camera angles and security sensors. The sound of the drill was muffled, the late hour a buffer against curious onlookers. When the wall finally gave way, they had carved an opening into a space that held more than 3,000 safety deposit boxes. When investigators later inspected the scene, they saw a chaotic tapestry of broken locks, shattered box lids, torn packing materials, and the remnants of what had once been personal treasures held for years, sometimes decades. Over 95% of the deposit boxes were violated, a number that stunned even seasoned law enforcement officials. The value of what was taken was astronomical. Initial estimates placed stolen goods in the tens of millions of euros. As the chaos of broken boxes was sorted, some appraisals climbed to figures approaching unimaginable sums, aggregating cash, gold, jewelry, precious metals, and documents that may have been irreplaceable in sentimental and historical value. The alarm systems finally registered that something was wrong in the early morning hours, but by that time, the damage was already done. Fire alarms, triggered by the physical disturbance in the basement, brought police and emergency responders to the scene shortly before dawn. When they arrived in force, they were met with an extraordinary sight: holes in the reinforced walls, thousands of open safety deposit boxes, and personal effects strewn across the floor. Anger and disbelief quickly spread among the bank's customers. When word of the breach reached the public, crowds gathered outside the shuttered bank, many bundled against the winter cold, demanding answers, looking for clues, and trying to grasp what had happened to the valuables they had entrusted to the bank's vault. Police officers were forced to intervene as emotions ran high, the shock and frustration of loss boiling over with each passing hour. Insurance could cover only a portion of the losses. Most safety deposit boxes are insured for sums up to a certain level, but the true value of many of the items taken could never be measured strictly in currency. Family heirlooms, documents carrying historical significance, jewelry passed through generations. All were swept away in a matter of hours. Surveillance footage captured fragments of the criminals' actions inside the parking structure earlier in the night. At one point, the group appeared almost routine in their movements, carrying bags and tools, as if they belonged there. In a detail that struck many as bizarre and almost cinematic, some of the thieves even appeared to pay for parking as part of their operation, as though blending into the mundane rhythms of life around them. When they made their escape, they did so in a stolen high-performance vehicle. A black Audi RS6, bearing stolen license plates, waited nearby. With those same masks and the same calm precision they had shown in the basement, they boarded the car and disappeared into the winter night. Nobody has publicly identified them. Nobody has been arrested. Their identities remain unknown, their motive undetermined beyond the financial windfall they took with them. Investigators combed through forensic evidence after the crime: fingerprints, tool marks, patterns of movement, camera footage from neighboring streets and businesses, and every shred of data they could gather. Yet even with these pieces, and with the cooperation of multiple law enforcement agencies, a full picture of who orchestrated the Gelsenkirchen heist remains elusive. Criminologists and security analysts described the operation as disturbingly professional. It combined careful timing, the exploitation of human routine, and the use of industrial-level gear to overcome what should have been an impregnable defense. It was not the product of random criminals acting on impulse, but rather the work of individuals who understood both the physical structure of the bank and the psychological rhythms of human oversight. The aftermath raised urgent questions across not just Germany, but the rest of Europe and financial institutions worldwide. How could a vault, the bastion of financial security, be breached so thoroughly? What gaps in physical protections and electronic monitoring systems were exploited? Were there intelligence failures? And perhaps most unsettling of all, had the criminals gained inside knowledge that would have allowed them to move with such precision? As debate widened and inquiries deepened, comparisons to fictional heists in popular movies, tales of meticulous planning and flawless execution, began to surface. But the Gelsenkirchen crime was not fiction. It was real. And for the thousands of affected customers, the loss was deeply personal. In quiet offices across the country, security specialists examined every camera angle captured on that December night, every vibration detected by alarms that should have raised alerts sooner, every protocol that might have been compromised or simply outdated. Government committees convened to discuss the implications for national security. Bank managers issued somber statements of regret and promised sweeping reviews of security protocols in branches across the country. Yet in the midst of all the official response and technical analysis, there remained an unmistakable truth: that even systems thought to be impenetrable can be undone by human ingenuity when it is focused, determined, and prepared. And for the people of Gelsenkirchen, the retirees who lost family heirlooms, the small business owners whose safety deposit boxes held decades of savings, the families whose documents and memories were stolen in a single night, this was not just a headline. This was a defining moment in their lives, a moment that reminded them that even the deepest vaults are only as strong as the weakest gap in their defenses, and that sometimes even the most routine institutions can be shattered by those who choose to break them. In the end, the Christmas heist of 2025 in Gelsenkirchen will be remembered not just as a crime, but as a narrative of human ambition, vulnerability, and the shocking realization that there are no places so secure that they cannot become the stage for history's most daring acts.